In our fast-paced, emotionally charged world, it's easy to become so intertwined with the emotions of others or the outcomes we desire that we lose sight of our own emotional needs. Emotional detachment is not something we often think about until we're caught in a whirlwind of stress, disappointment, or burnout. But the first step in detaching emotionally is recognizing when it's necessary. This begins with self-awareness, a deep understanding of when your emotions are no longer serving you, and the courage to step back and reassess. Often we find ourselves overly attached to outcomes, whether it's how we want a conversation to unfold, how we want people to behave, or the way we envision our goals coming to fruition. We think that by holding on tightly, we can control the situation, but in truth, the tighter we grip, the more we strain our emotional well-being. When we become too attached to things outside of ourselves, we end up giving away pieces of our emotional energy, which can lead to feelings of overwhelm, frustration, or resentment. Recognizing the need for emotional detachment starts with noticing the signs of emotional depletion. Perhaps you're constantly feeling drained after interactions with certain people, or you're increasingly frustrated by circumstances that are out of your control. Maybe your sense of self-worth is being tied to how others perceive you or to the results of your efforts, leaving you emotionally exposed when things don't go as planned. These are all signals that you may need to step back and reconsider your emotional attachment to certain outcomes. It's essential to ask yourself, am I attached to the situation in a way that is helping or hindering my growth? Sometimes the attachment to an outcome can be so strong that we lose sight of the bigger picture, the importance of emotional balance and resilience. Emotional detachment isn't about withdrawing from the world or becoming cold and indifferent. Rather, it's about creating a healthy emotional distance that allows you to make decisions from a place of clarity and strength rather than reactionary emotion. Another way to recognize the need for detachment is by tuning into how your body feels. The body has an uncanny ability to signal when something is emotionally taxing. Tight shoulders, clenched jaws, shallow breathing. These physical signs are often an indication that your emotional state is being compromised by attachments that no longer serve you. When these signals arise, it's time to pause and reflect. The truth is, emotional detachment isn't a sign of weakness or emotional distance. It's a reflection of emotional maturity. It takes incredible strength to acknowledge when something is no longer benefiting you and to have the courage to let go. It's not about abandoning emotions. It's about respecting the emotions you're experiencing and choosing not to let them dictate your actions or define your worth. Recognizing the need for emotional detachment is the first step in reclaiming your emotional autonomy and creating a space where you can protect your inner peace while still engaging with the world around you. At first glance, emotional detachment and emotional avoidance might seem similar. They both involve distancing ourselves from difficult feelings or situations. However, there's a significant difference between the two that's crucial to understand if you are to cultivate a healthy, balanced approach to managing your emotions. Emotional detachment is an active, intentional process. It's about creating a healthy distance from emotions, events, or people that are overwhelming or no longer serve your well-being without shutting yourself off completely. It allows you to step back, take a breath, and make decisions from a place of clarity and emotional resilience. Detachment gives you the space to reflect and process your feelings in a way that keeps you grounded and centered without allowing those emotions to control you. It's an empowering tool for self-care that helps you stay emotionally regulated and ensures that you're not driven by reactions, but by conscious, thoughtful responses. On the other hand, emotional avoidance is a passive, often unconscious behavior that seeks to push emotions away entirely. It is driven by fear or discomfort with emotions, causing us to bury or ignore them in the hope that they will go away. Avoidance might look like procrastinating on difficult conversations, withdrawing from situations where you might feel vulnerable, or denying the presence of emotions altogether. While avoidance might offer temporary relief, it often leads to unresolved issues festering underneath the surface. Over time, this can cause emotional numbness, anxiety, and increased stress. As the emotions we avoid don't disappear, they build up, and eventually they demand our attention in ways that may be even harder to address. The key distinction between detachment and avoidance lies in the way we relate to our emotions. With detachment, we acknowledge and honor our emotions, but we don't allow them to govern our behavior. We feel them, process them, and then create the necessary boundaries to protect our emotional well-being. Detachment empowers us to respond rather than react to emotional triggers. It allows us to be in control of how we engage with our feelings and the situations around us, giving us the freedom to make healthier, more thoughtful choices. Avoidance, in contrast, seeks to escape or numb emotions altogether. When we avoid our feelings, we're not truly processing or dealing with them. We're simply pushing them aside in the hope that they will disappear. This avoidance can lead to greater emotional pain in the long run because we haven't given ourselves the opportunity to heal or learn from those feelings. By avoiding difficult emotions, we avoid the valuable lessons they bring, lessons about ourselves, our boundaries, and our values. Another aspect of avoidance is the tendency to push people away, not just emotions. Avoidance can manifest in relationships when we are afraid of conflict, vulnerability, or emotional intimacy. Instead of confronting difficult conversations or feelings with others, we withdraw and shut down, creating distance that ultimately hinders the connection. Emotional detachment, on the other hand, allows us to stay connected even in difficult situations by setting healthy boundaries and engaging with others in a way that respects both their needs and our own. The practice of emotional detachment is grounded in self-awareness, self-respect, and emotional maturity. It requires us to face our emotions head-on and navigate them with intention. Detachment isn't about rejecting our feelings or running away from discomfort. It's about creating space to experience them without letting them define us or control our actions. It's about standing in our power, knowing that we have the ability to control how we respond to emotional situations rather than being ruled by them. In contrast, emotional avoidance is a defense mechanism that prevents us from fully experiencing our emotions. It's about avoiding discomfort at all costs, but in doing so, we rob ourselves of the opportunity for growth and healing. While avoidance may feel easier in the moment, it ultimately keeps us stuck in patterns that prevent us from living authentically and emotionally freely. Understanding the difference between detachment and avoidance is critical for emotional well-being. When we learn to detach with intention, we open the door to emotional clarity, resilience, and a deeper connection with ourselves and others. But when we engage in avoidance, we risk creating emotional barriers that prevent us from growing, healing, and truly living. Choosing detachment over avoidance allows us to face our emotions with courage, embrace vulnerability, and ultimately protect the peace and balance we deserve. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They're not about building walls between ourselves and others. Rather, they are about creating the necessary space to protect our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Healthy boundaries empower us to preserve our energy and integrity, allowing us to navigate relationships and situations with clarity, respect, and balance. Creating these boundaries is an act of self-respect, one that ensures we maintain a healthy relationship with ourselves while still remaining connected to others. The first step in creating healthy boundaries is understanding what they are and why they matter. Boundaries define where you end and others begin. They help you establish limits on what you are willing to accept in relationships and situations, ensuring that you are not overextended or compromised. Boundaries allow you to say yes to the things that align with your values and needs, and no to those that do not. They create a clear line between what is yours to manage and what belongs to someone else. Without boundaries, we risk becoming overwhelmed, burned out, and emotionally drained. It's easy to say yes to every request or demand, but over time, this can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and depletion. Healthy boundaries help us avoid this by allowing us to prioritize our needs and allocate our time, energy, and resources accordingly. They allow us to choose how much of ourselves we give and when we need to step back to recharge. Setting healthy boundaries requires self-awareness. You must first understand your own needs, desires, and limitations before you can communicate them clearly to others. This process of self-discovery is crucial because it helps you identify what is acceptable and what isn't. Sometimes we may not even realize we need boundaries until we experience emotional exhaustion or stress, which acts as a signal that something is out of balance. By tuning into your emotions and physical reactions, you can become more aware of when boundaries are needed. Once you have a clear understanding of your own needs, it's time to communicate your boundaries to others. This is where many people get stuck. Setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable, especially if we're afraid of disappointing others or causing conflict. But it's important to remember that boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about asserting your own needs and maintaining your emotional health. It's also essential to recognize that healthy boundaries are mutually respectful. Just as you have the right to set boundaries, others also have the right to do the same. Healthy relationships are built on understanding and honoring each other's boundaries. When communicating your boundaries, it's important to be clear, assertive, and compassionate. Being clear means expressing your needs and limits in a direct and unambiguous way. Avoid vagueness or hesitation, as this can lead to confusion or misunderstanding. Being assertive involves standing up for yourself without being aggressive or apologetic. You are simply stating what you need to protect your well-being. Compassionate communication means acknowledging the feelings of others without compromising your own. It's possible to be firm in your boundaries while still being kind and respectful. It's also important to remember that boundaries are not set once and forgotten. They are dynamic and require ongoing maintenance. As you grow and evolve, your boundaries may shift, and that's okay. Revisit and adjust them when necessary, especially if you find yourself in new situations or relationships that require different limits. It's perfectly normal to need to reassess your boundaries over time, especially when you encounter new challenges or experiences. This fluidity ensures that your boundaries continue to serve you in ways that protect your well-being and foster healthy connections with others. An essential part of boundary setting is recognizing and addressing boundary violations. Sometimes people may not respect your boundaries, either intentionally or unintentionally. This can feel disheartening, especially if it involves people you care about. However, it's important to address these violations early on to prevent resentment from building. It might mean having a difficult conversation or asserting your limits more firmly, but doing so will reinforce your commitment to your own well-being and establish clear expectations for others. The fear of conflict often holds people back from setting boundaries. Many of us worry about being labeled selfish or unkind when we assert our needs, but in reality, setting boundaries is a form of self-care, not selfishness. Boundaries allow you to protect your emotional and physical health, which in turn enables you to be present and supportive for others. You can't give from an empty cup, so setting boundaries ensures that you're filling your own cup before you pour into others. The healthier you are, the more you have to offer in your relationships and work. Boundaries also play a critical role in maintaining a sense of emotional detachment, which is necessary for self-preservation. By setting clear boundaries, you create emotional space between yourself and the stresses or demands of others, allowing you to detach with compassion. Healthy boundaries help you stay grounded, not overwhelmed, and they prevent others from overstepping into your emotional territory. Creating and maintaining healthy boundaries is an ongoing practice. There will be times when your boundaries will be tested, when you feel tempted to cross your own lines or let someone else's needs override your own. This is where the practice of self-compassion comes in. When you slip or feel unsure about your boundaries, it's important to forgive yourself and recommit to protecting your emotional space. Boundaries aren't about perfection, they're about balance and resilience. The more you practice setting and honoring them, the stronger and clearer your emotional foundation will become. Ultimately, creating healthy boundaries isn't about closing yourself off from others. It's about creating the space to show up as your most authentic, balanced self. By setting boundaries, you're not only protecting your own energy, but you're also contributing to healthier, more respectful relationships. You're teaching others how to treat you, and you're showing up for yourself in ways that allow you to fully engage with life without sacrificing your peace of mind. Vulnerability is often perceived as a weakness in a world that values strength, control, and resilience. Many people associate vulnerability with being exposed, fragile, or even defenseless. However, vulnerability is in fact a profound and powerful tool for emotional detachment. It plays a key role in helping us create the space we need to protect our emotional well-being while still remaining open, authentic, and engaged with the world around us. At the heart of vulnerability is the courage to be seen for who we truly are without pretense or defense. It requires us to acknowledge and embrace our emotions, our fears, desires, insecurities, and dreams without shame or judgment. Vulnerability is not about being passive or weak. It's about showing up in our most authentic state, acknowledging the full range of our emotions, and allowing ourselves to feel and express them fully. Only through this kind of openness can we begin to experience true emotional freedom. When it comes to emotional detachment, vulnerability plays an essential role in helping us create healthy emotional boundaries. Detachment at its core is not about suppressing or denying emotions, but about creating the emotional space to experience them without letting them control or define us. Vulnerability allows us to face our emotions with integrity and compassion without becoming entangled in them. It is through vulnerability that we learn how to separate ourselves from the emotional turmoil of others or the weight of expectations while still maintaining our connection to our own truths. When we detach emotionally, it is not because we don't care. Rather, it is because we recognize that we are responsible for our own emotional state. Vulnerability enables us to do this in a healthy way. It allows us to step back from the emotional chaos around us without turning our hearts or minds off entirely. We can acknowledge our emotions, honor them, and then create the necessary distance to protect our emotional energy. This ability to remain emotionally aware, yet detached from the need to control or fix every situation, is a powerful act of self-care. Another crucial aspect of vulnerability in emotional detachment is that it helps us release the need for perfection. When we are vulnerable, we accept that it's okay to not have all the answers, to not have everything figured out, and to not always be in control. Vulnerability frees us from the pressure of needing to be everything to everyone and allows us to step into our own emotional space with honesty. We become comfortable with the discomfort of not knowing, not controlling, and not always having a clear path forward. It is through this acceptance that we can practice true detachment, not by retreating, but by standing strong in our own emotional truth without needing to cling to the outcomes. Vulnerability also helps us build the trust that is essential for detachment. Emotional detachment requires trust in ourselves and our ability to navigate difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. By being vulnerable, we learn to trust that we can hold space for our feelings, that we can sit with discomfort without being consumed by it. We develop the resilience to face emotional challenges head on, knowing that detachment is not about shutting down, but about maintaining control over our emotional responses. Vulnerability allows us to trust our ability to be present with our emotions without losing ourselves in them. Additionally, vulnerability enables us to set healthier boundaries, which is a critical aspect of emotional detachment. Setting boundaries requires us to be clear and honest about what we need and where we draw the line. Vulnerability allows us to express these needs with honesty, without fear of judgment or rejection. When we are vulnerable, we communicate our boundaries from a place of authenticity, not defensiveness. This openness helps others understand our limits and gives us the courage to stand firm in those boundaries without feeling guilty or ashamed for doing so. There is also a profound connection between vulnerability and emotional resilience. When we practice vulnerability, we allow ourselves to experience the full spectrum of human emotions: joy, sorrow, excitement, fear, and everything in between. Each emotional experience builds our emotional strength and resilience, enabling us to handle difficult situations with greater ease. Vulnerability teaches us that we do not need to be invulnerable to be strong. It is through embracing our vulnerabilities that we develop the emotional resilience necessary to detach from situations, relationships, or outcomes that no longer serve us. Vulnerability also nurtures empathy, which is a vital component of detachment. It allows us to understand and connect with the emotions of others without becoming emotionally entangled in their experiences. When we are vulnerable, we can acknowledge the pain, joy, or uncertainty of others while still maintaining our emotional boundaries. This balance between connection and detachment fosters healthier, more balanced relationships. We become able to offer support without absorbing the emotional weight of others, giving us the freedom to protect our own energy while still showing up with compassion. Through vulnerability, we learn to honor our emotional experiences without letting them dictate our actions or our sense of self-worth. It helps us detach from the pressure to constantly please others, to be perfect, or to seek validation through external means. Instead, vulnerability allows us to validate ourselves and our emotions, creating a solid foundation of self-worth that is independent of outside opinions or circumstances. We become more grounded in our own truth, able to separate our feelings from those of others while still remaining open to connection and understanding. In the process of emotional detachment, vulnerability becomes a tool for self-preservation. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, we are not turning away from emotions, but learning to experience them without letting them overwhelm us. Vulnerability helps us build the emotional space we need to preserve our peace, manage our energy, and protect our well-being while still engaging with the world in a meaningful, authentic way. Ultimately, vulnerability is not the opposite of detachment. It is the gateway to it. It allows us to engage with our emotions fully, to let go of what no longer serves us, and to create the emotional space needed to heal, grow, and move forward. Vulnerability is the bridge between connection and emotional autonomy, helping us stay grounded in our truth while remaining open to the richness of human experience. It is through vulnerability that we can learn the delicate dance of emotional detachment, embracing our emotions without allowing them to control our lives. Self-compassion is a cornerstone of emotional health, yet it's often one of the most overlooked practices in our daily lives. In a world that demands productivity, achievement, and constant striving for success, we often forget to be kind to ourselves when we fall short or face challenges. Instead of offering ourselves compassion, we tend to be our harshest critics, berating ourselves for mistakes, flaws, or perceived inadequacies. However, practicing self-compassion is not only a radical act of self-love, but it is also an essential tool for emotional well-being, particularly when it comes to emotional detachment. Self-compassion is the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness, concern, and care that you would offer a close friend in times of struggle or pain. It's about being gentle with yourself in the face of imperfections and offering yourself grace when you experience hardship, rather than turning inward with self-judgment or criticism. It's the ability to acknowledge your suffering and respond to it with warmth, understanding, and non-judgment, rather than harshness or avoidance. The first step in practicing self-compassion is to recognize that suffering, failure, and imperfection are a natural part of the human experience. Too often we think that if we experience pain or make mistakes, it means we are weak or inadequate. We may even feel ashamed or embarrassed by our struggles, which only deepens the emotional pain. But self-compassion invites us to recognize that suffering is universal. Everyone goes through difficulties, whether it's a setback at work, a failed relationship, or personal insecurities. There is no need to judge ourselves for experiencing these challenges because they are a part of life. By accepting this truth, we can begin to treat ourselves with the same understanding and kindness we would offer to others in a similar situation. A crucial component of self-compassion is mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to be aware of our emotions and experiences in the present moment without judgment or resistance. When we practice mindfulness, we become more attuned to our emotional state, acknowledging our pain without letting it control us. It helps us avoid the tendency to suppress or deny our feelings, and instead, we learn to be present with them. Mindfulness in the context of self-compassion means allowing yourself to feel what you feel without labeling your emotions as bad or wrong. Whether you are feeling sadness, frustration, or disappointment, mindfulness helps you acknowledge and accept these emotions as part of your human experience without attempting to push them away or criticize yourself for feeling them. By practicing self-compassion, you develop the ability to separate yourself from your emotions. Emotional detachment requires us to create a healthy distance between ourselves and the emotions that no longer serve us. However, this doesn't mean that we ignore or suppress our feelings. It means that we acknowledge them with kindness and understanding, and then let them pass without letting them define us. Self-compassion helps us to do this with grace. Instead of getting caught up in self-criticism or self-blame when we experience difficult emotions, we can approach ourselves with warmth and patience. We can accept that we are human and that it is okay to feel vulnerable, upset, or imperfect. An essential part of self-compassion is learning how to speak to ourselves kindly. The way we talk to ourselves matters. Many of us have an inner dialogue that is filled with self-criticism, perfectionism, and judgment. We may tell ourselves that we are not good enough, that we've failed, or that we don't deserve success or happiness. These thoughts, when repeated, can erode our sense of self-worth and increase our emotional distress. However, when we practice self-compassion, we learn to change this inner dialogue. We replace self-criticism with gentle, supportive words that remind us that we are enough as we are. When we fail or make mistakes, we can say to ourselves, "It's okay, I am doing my best and I can learn from this experience." This positive, nurturing self-talk helps to build our resilience and emotional strength. Self-compassion also involves recognizing when we need to care for ourselves and take a break. In a world that values constant productivity, it's easy to push ourselves beyond our limits and ignore the signs of burnout. But self-compassion invites us to listen to our bodies and minds when they are asking for rest. When we are physically, mentally, or emotionally drained, it is not a sign of weakness to take time for self-care. It is an act of compassion. Whether it's taking a nap, going for a walk, journaling, or simply sitting in silence, self-care is an important aspect of practicing self-compassion. It's about honoring our needs and recognizing that we are worthy of rest, just as we would encourage a loved one to take care of themselves. Furthermore, self-compassion allows us to embrace our imperfections and let go of the unrealistic expectations of perfectionism. Perfectionism can be a significant barrier to emotional detachment, as it often keeps us tethered to outcomes and unattainable standards. When we are overly concerned with perfection, we lose sight of what truly matters: our growth, our well-being, and our ability to respond with resilience when things don't go as planned. Self-compassion teaches us that we don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love and respect. We can make mistakes, we can fail, and we can still be kind to ourselves. When we release the grip of perfectionism, we free ourselves from the constant pressure and allow space for emotional detachment, where we are no longer defined by our successes or failures. An important aspect of self-compassion is also forgiveness. We are often much harsher on ourselves than we would ever be with others. When we make mistakes or hurt someone, we tend to hold on to guilt, shame, or regret. Self-compassion asks us to forgive ourselves for those mistakes and understand that we are not defined by them. We are all capable of growth and change, and holding on to past mistakes only prevents us from moving forward. Forgiving ourselves opens the door to healing and emotional freedom, allowing us to detach from negative self-judgment and move toward a healthier, more balanced emotional state. Ultimately, practicing self-compassion is not just about being kind to ourselves when things are going well. It is about offering ourselves care, understanding, and patience when we are struggling. It's about acknowledging that we are worthy of love and respect, even in our most imperfect moments. By incorporating self-compassion into our lives, we create the emotional space to detach from the pressures, expectations, and judgments of the world around us, allowing us to show up as our authentic, resilient selves. This practice strengthens our emotional resilience and empowers us to navigate life's challenges with kindness, understanding, and the courage to stay true to ourselves. When we practice self-compassion, we are better equipped to handle the ups and downs of life, and we are more capable of setting healthy boundaries and embracing emotional detachment as an act of self-preservation and emotional well-being. Detachment often carries a misunderstood or negative connotation. Many people associate detachment with withdrawal, coldness, or a lack of care. However, detachment, when practiced in a healthy and balanced way, is not about shutting ourselves off from the world or disconnecting from others. It is about creating the emotional freedom to experience life fully without being unduly affected by the turmoil, expectations, or demands that might otherwise overwhelm us. In this sense, detachment offers an incredible sense of freedom, the freedom to live authentically, make choices that align with our values, and protect our emotional well-being without being tethered to external pressures. To truly embrace the freedom of detachment, it's important to first understand what detachment means in this context. It is the ability to separate ourselves from external influences, outcomes, and the emotional chaos around us. It's the capacity to respond to life's challenges and uncertainties with a sense of emotional autonomy, where we can experience life's ups and downs without losing our sense of self. Detachment doesn't mean disengagement or avoidance. It means being present and involved in life while maintaining a sense of inner peace, clarity, and balance. It's about being able to hold space for emotions, both our own and others, while not allowing them to define or control us. Embracing the freedom of detachment requires a shift in perspective, a shift from living reactively to living proactively. When we live reactively, we allow external events, people's opinions, and our circumstances to dictate our emotional state. We may find ourselves constantly reacting to situations out of a sense of obligation, guilt, fear, or insecurity. This creates a cycle of emotional turbulence where we feel as though we are at the mercy of the world around us. But detachment allows us to step out of that cycle. It helps us to consciously choose how we respond, how much energy we invest in certain situations, and what we allow to affect our sense of peace. One of the most liberating aspects of detachment is that it frees us from the need to control everything and everyone around us. We live in a world that often encourages a sense of control, whether it's controlling our relationships, our outcomes, or the way others perceive us. Yet, control is an illusion. We cannot control others, nor can we guarantee specific outcomes. When we let go of the need to control, we liberate ourselves from unnecessary stress, frustration, and disappointment. We learn to accept that we cannot dictate every detail of our lives, but we can control how we respond to what happens. Detachment is the practice of surrendering to the ebb and flow of life and finding peace in the uncertainty. This freedom also comes from releasing the emotional attachments that bind us to people, places, or outcomes. Attachment often means investing so much of our identity or emotional energy into something or someone that we lose sight of who we are. We can become so entangled in someone's expectations, the need for approval, or the desire for a particular outcome that we forget to live in alignment with our own needs, values, and desires. By practicing detachment, we create emotional space between ourselves and the things we are attached to. This space allows us to see things more clearly without the distortions of fear, anxiety, or attachment. It empowers us to make choices based on what is truly right for us, rather than what we feel we should do or what we fear will happen if we don't act in a certain way. In relationships, emotional detachment can be a transformative practice. It doesn't mean disconnecting or withdrawing from those we care about. Rather, it means showing up for others without losing ourselves in the process. We can love deeply, give freely, and be fully present without becoming emotionally enmeshed. Detachment helps us to maintain our own sense of self-worth and peace, even when others' actions or emotions are unpredictable or beyond our control. We can care for others without absorbing their pain, their drama, or their emotional baggage. We can offer support, compassion, and empathy without sacrificing our own emotional health. This freedom enables us to engage in relationships with greater clarity, authenticity, and balance. A crucial element of embracing the freedom of detachment is the ability to say no when necessary. Many of us struggle with the fear of disappointing others, letting people down, or creating conflict. As a result, we may overextend ourselves or say yes to things that do not serve our well-being, simply to avoid conflict or to gain approval. However, detachment teaches us that it is not only okay, but essential to say no when something doesn't align with our values or needs. Saying no is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of self-respect. By setting healthy boundaries, we protect our emotional energy and maintain the freedom to prioritize what truly matters to us. This practice of detachment allows us to honor our own needs without feeling guilty or fearful of the consequences. The freedom of detachment also allows us to stop clinging to the past or worrying about the future. Often we become emotionally attached to past experiences, whether positive or negative, and allow those memories to shape our present emotional state. Similarly, we may become overly attached to certain future outcomes, living with anxiety or fear about what may or may not happen. Detachment helps us to break free from this cycle of attachment to time. By embracing the present moment, we can let go of the emotional weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. We can focus on what is within our control right now, which is the only thing that truly matters. Detachment, in this sense, is a practice of living fully in the now, free from the burdens of past regrets or future anxieties. One of the most empowering aspects of detachment is that it gives us the freedom to be who we truly are, without the need for validation or approval from others. We live in a world where there is often pressure to meet societal expectations, adhere to specific standards, and gain external recognition. Detachment liberates us from these pressures by allowing us to define ourselves on our own terms. It gives us the space to follow our own path, make decisions that align with our authentic selves, and pursue goals that are meaningful to us without feeling the need to please others or conform to external expectations. This freedom leads to greater self-confidence, self-trust, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. Embracing the freedom of detachment also means embracing the fluidity of life. Life is constantly changing and nothing is permanent. Relationships evolve, careers shift, and circumstances change. Detachment allows us to flow with these changes rather than resist them. We can move through life's transitions with a sense of acceptance, knowing that change is inevitable and often brings new opportunities for growth and expansion. We don't need to cling to the way things were or the way we think things should be. Detachment teaches us that we are capable of adapting, learning, and growing through every stage of life. Ultimately, embracing the freedom of detachment is about finding peace in the midst of life's unpredictability and challenges. It is about creating emotional space to protect our energy, maintain our integrity, and make choices that align with our values. Detachment allows us to engage with life fully, but without becoming overwhelmed by it. It offers us the freedom to experience joy, love, and success without the fear of losing ourselves or our sense of self-worth in the process. By practicing detachment, we discover that true freedom comes not from controlling the world around us, but from the ability to remain grounded, clear, and peaceful within ourselves, no matter what life brings. In a world that often demands more from us, more energy, more attention, more validation, it can be easy to lose ourselves in the chaos. We find ourselves caught up in the expectations of others, the pressure to perform, and the constant drive for achievement. But true emotional freedom comes not from meeting external demands, but from the power of emotional detachment, a practice that allows us to reclaim our inner peace, protect our emotional well-being, and remain rooted in who we truly are. Detachment is not about withdrawing or becoming cold. It's about creating space between ourselves and the emotional turbulence around us. It's about acknowledging our feelings without being defined by them, and about learning to navigate life's challenges with clarity, resilience, and grace. Through emotional detachment, we learn to let go of the need to control everything, to relinquish our attachment to outcomes, and to embrace the fluidity of life.